I wanted to show y'all this model's PSD because it is wrong. So I wanted to go about how I would fix a model or how you could fix it on your own to avoid me charging you to fix it. So basically, when we're checking through a model, I have a bit of a model checklist, right? On the checklist is 1, all parts have sufficient back drawn, okay? 2, model is centered, okay? Model is named properly. Pieces are separated sufficiently. Nailed it. Okay, so yeah, here is my checklist I go through when I'm like deciding if a model is quote-unquote proper or not. So basically, all the parts have to have a sufficient back. The model needs to be centered properly, named properly, and then the parts need to be separated sufficiently. So, number 1, right? All parts have sufficient back. Now this, I already checked with this model, and I'd say it's good. Because when I remove the hair, the whole head is there. The entire back hair is there, which is good. There's no, like, weird gaps in the model, as you could see. Even if things are hidden, they're drawn fully. So that would be a check for this model. It looks good. Okay, the problem with this model is number 2, which is model is centered properly. Now, this artist made a pretty common mistake, essentially. So if I were to put the ruler here in the center of this canvas, which would be at 1000 pixels, and then I were to select the entire model, boom, boom, here. Oh my god, so many folders. And hit Control T. Whoop. Wait, let me show the ruler on all layers. I select everything here and hit Control T. You could see it's like way off in terms of the face. Essentially, the reason for keeping the face of your model symmetrical is so the rigger can rig one of the eyes and then flip it if they happen to be symmetrical perfectly. It also just helps for animations in general and body parts. Now, the pupils here are actually not perfectly symmetrical, so I would rig these. Oh, actually, the highlights are separate. So the pupils are symmetrical. I'd probably flip these and then rig the highlights individually as they're not perfectly symmetrical. But it's going to be a big problem for me if the face is this off-center. So we're going to have to fix up the symmetry of this model. And they already attempted to fix it once, but they weren't quite sure how to use the ruler tool and whatnot in Clip Studio. So that is where we come in. Okay, now model is centered properly, basically. After all that work just now is why I charge extra for model centering. Even though I don't really want to charge extra, I mean, it just takes more time. Okay, that's good. Model is basically centered now. Naming properly. What I mean by naming properly is no spaces. So essentially, instead of left eye, like left space eye, it should be left_eye, which is something I've posted about on Twitter. That is what I would consider to be proper naming convention. And I'm gonna start enforcing that when I accept art commissions, because if you don't name the layers properly, you have to individually name every single part ID in Live 2D. And of course, if you're sitting there with a 300 layer model and you're naming every single ID, it takes a long time. And you want the part IDs to be named properly, because in VTube Studio, and I'm not sure about other programs, but VTube Studio for sure, you can use extensions to make certain parts of the model glow based on the ID, or you could do other cool stuff like glow-in-the-dark effects. But without the IDs, you can't do that. So you want the IDs. So a lot of people will write like left eye, you know, and then they'll put a space in between here, right? like a actual computer space, but that's bad. What you want to do is put left and then an underscore I with no spaces. You can also use a hyphen. I prefer underscores personally. I just think they work better. You could also alternatively just do 0 spaces like L-I. But I think the hyphen adds like, makes it more readable. Is it okay if the LR part is at the end and not the beginning? Yes, it's okay. It doesn't matter. That does not matter. That's more your preference. I personally put them at the beginning, but it doesn't hinder me if they're at the end. Like, it doesn't matter that much. Yeah, so that's a check for this model, it seems. I mean, just from a quick skim through, it seems like... I asked them to rename it based on that convention. It seems like they did it. Looks good. Awesome. Oh, another thing to note. This isn't something I really check for that much because it's kind of hard to check for and it's an easy fix, but you want no duplicate layer names, okay? No duplicate. Look at my handwriting. I'm a child. Okay, so if you have... And that also applies to groups. So you can't have a group, like a little folder here called LI, you know, LI, and then have a layer under it that's also called LI. That will mess up the naming, the rigging convention in Live 2D. And yeah, so these cannot, you know, that's bad. So essentially what would happen if you have too many layers with the same name is that Live 2D will assign this one the ID of LI, right? Because this is like a proper naming convention. But then you can only have one unique ID. IDs cannot repeat in Live 2D. An ID is like a unique name. It cannot apply to anything else. So it's going to see this name and it's going to be like, oh, I don't know what to name this. So it's going to make the ID like 1, 2, 7, 5, 8, not. It's like going to make it something weird. And then if you see this in your VTube studio, you're not going to know what that is. You're going to see left eye and think that's like the left eye, like this pupil or something, when in fact it's just a group. So it messes up quite a few things. Sorry if it was mentioned, I had to stream muted for a bit, but if I recall, a Live 2D layer name's left-right should be relative to the character instead of the canvas, correct? Yes, yes, absolutely. So this is the left side. That's also another thing I should add, really. And this is the right side. I've seen like some here's the telling bit. I've only seen artists argue about this and no riggers. Some artists are like, oh, it doesn't matter that much. But pretty much every rigger is going to tell you that it matters. There, left/right are named properly. Add that to the list. My beautiful spelling list. We already kind of checked this one. It's similar to all parts have sufficient backdrawn, except what this means is that you actually separated as much as you should have. So the eyelashes here are separated, which is good. Now you can see all of these eyelashes are together. I would normally prefer all 3 of these eyelashes be apart so I could put physics on them. However, this client did not request physics on them and they're rather small. So it's not a big deal for this model. But if for anyone else who is doing art for me, please separate the eyelashes. Like, I know it's a pain. You don't have to name them anything fancy. You could just be like lash 1, lash 2, lash 3. You don't have to be very specific. And it could be like lash 1, lash 2, lash 3, lash 4, lash 5, lash 6. And that will be just fine. But yeah, I would have preferred these 2 balls also be separated. So I could get more swing. Like these, I would have preferred every ball to be separate. This is a chibi model though, so I'm overthinking it a bit. But I guess I'm trying to like speak more for what I would do for bigger models. For a chibi model, this is sufficient. If it was like a full body model, I would ask for a few more things to be separated, but I mean, it looks pretty good to me. I just wanted to do this on stream so upcoming clients and stuff could have a better idea of what it means for me when I say a proper PSD. Is it okay if I remove some vowels from the layer names to make them short? Yes, it is. Really, as long as you understand what they are, because you're going to be the one looking at them in VTube Studio and editing them for, like, extensions and glow effects, it's fine. The IDs are more important for the client than they are for me, the rigger. So, if I had an artist do stuff for me, but the artist was not my client, I would tell the artist to perhaps extend the names. But since you are both the artist and the client, it doesn't matter. Cute. Cute. They're all ready to rig, so I'm gonna save this as a PSD. Boom. Boom. Perfect.